tried to get every knob and every dial correct and the timing perfectly on HCl or enzymes or probiotics or whatever it might be. And then I just tested it. I tested the theory. Like, okay, so it's just a theory. There's no actual scientific literature that suggests you have to take your HCl before, during, or after a meal. What do I notice if I do it for 1 month this way, another month this way, another month this way? And what I notice for my body is I find no difference. And so then it goes down to what is the easiest way to sustain this healthy habit. And for me, the easiest way to sustain this healthy habit is to take my pills after my meal, because if I take a big dump of pills before my meal, sometimes it upsets my stomach a little bit. Or I've had instances where I thought we were going to start eating, and so I took a bunch of HCl and then you didn't eat. And then I didn't eat because maybe a conversation happened or the food got burnt.
Exactly.
Or
things get in the way.
I forget. And then like 30 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I'm hurting. What's happening? And I was like, oh my gosh, I took my pills and I didn't eat. So
awesome.
Yeah. So now I do take it. I do take it after my meal, directly after. I do know that for some people, it is really, really beneficial for them to take it right before they start eating or right in the middle. So
So it's a one-to-one basis, and we have to test it out because there's no scientific answer to this question, right? That's the bottom line.
Correct.
Welcome to the BiohackingMyIllness.com podcast. Biohacking your way to optimal health. The content of this show is for informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any illness or medical condition. Nothing in today's discussion is meant to serve as medical advice or as information to facilitate self-treatment. As always, please discuss any potential health-related decisions with your own personal doctor. And now, your host and biohacking coach, Dr. Arthur Mariano.
Hi there, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, Biohacking My Illness podcast. Today I brought Steven Wright. This dude knows a lot about gut health, and I had to have him on. So, like I said, I will be doing a series of gut health episodes. Steven owns a company called Healthy Gut. There's a discount code in the description of the video, because I just became an affiliate for them. Their products are awesome. And I had Steven, I'm actually going to have Steven twice on the show. Once to talk about, just general gut health and infections. That's this very same episode. And then I'll bring it again in a few weeks to talk about, the specific products. Butyrate, which is a second generation Butyrate, and enzymes, and now they also launched a probiotic supplement. I'm very anxious. We're looking forward to talking about it. Very, very excited about this episode. We talked about many things, and I tried to make this episode revolving around the idea that there's going to be a killing phase. Because I recently started to, I've been through this, I've had success, but I gotta be honest, it took me like a world of hard work to get this to work for my own case. I felt like I had to support many different systems of the body. I had to do things right, and I don't like the approach of just go and kill everything. It doesn't work. Like for most chronically sick people, it makes things worse, and I think it's very dangerous to just take antimicrobial supplements right off the bat. So I'm bringing guests to talk about issue. I brought Misty's story. Now I brought Steven for this episode. I'm gonna bring here in Krishnan from Microbiome Labs, and I will bring a ton of other people. But the idea is that there's this killing phase that we have to go through sometimes for specific cases, and then balancing out the microbiome. I love gut health. It's probably my favorite topic in health. And so I had to have Steven on. Steven is really a, what can I say about it? He just knows so much, and it was incredible, the podcast. So make sure to listen to the whole thing. And if you want to try their products, which are amazing, like on paper, because in practice you may react to some of them. I don't know. Each organism and individual is one specific organism, and there may be reactions. And if you react to something, just remove it. But on paper, they sound amazing, and that's the reason why I became an affiliate for them. So there's this discount code below, or an affiliate link, and I hope you do enjoy this conversation. It was awesome, and without further ado, let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today I've got Steven Wright with me. He's a gut specialist. We'll probably have 2 or 3 sessions because I just became an affiliate for Steven's company. He has multiple awesome products for the gut. But today we would like to talk about gut health in general. And I want to pick Steven's brain on infections and how to go through the entire process, similarly to what I've done with Missy's story in the last episodes, but talking about specific supplements for specific phases of the entire journey. Steven, it is an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for hosting. Thanks for having me.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure. So let's start. In 60 seconds or less, if possible, what's your story like regarding your own digestive problems and health in general?
Guy that doesn't get all the right genetics, has a bunch of lifestyle, environmental things happen, ends up, 50, 60 pounds overweight, acne, bloating so bad I cry every day, depression, anxiety, things like that in Western medicine, and standard stuff that you find on the internet, like exercise harder and eat certain things, doesn't necessarily work. So I get angry, and I find that a elimination diet of sorts called the specific carbohydrate diet gives me like 50% relief in a week, and it empowers me to use my electrical engineering sort of brain mind and my curiosity to just never stop. And I ended up getting Kalish functional medicine certified. I saw people as a consultant for a while, about 350 people, and I've been writing and researching about digestive health for over 12 years now.
Awesome. So right now you're concentrated in your company full time. You're not seeing anybody?
Yeah, that's correct.
Awesome. I love Dr. Kalish, by the way. So I love that you have that background as well. So pretty much it's fair to say that you had to figure this thing out to solve your own problems, and your interest for health came, from the fact that you had all these problems and you had to figure out the solution for them. Is that right?
Yeah. I think most people who end up doing this for a long time have a selfish reason behind it, which is that, they have their own pains that they're trying to solve for themselves or for their families. So that's the main driver. And then I've always had a propensity to want more, like better athletic performance, better looks, better life situation, things like that. And so that kind of has me always asking the question, like, well, why is it that I can't eat certain things, or why is it that life is a certain way? So between those two things of pain and curiosity of what else is out there, I think that's kind of what drove me. Still drives me.
Do you consider yourself a type A guy then?
Yeah.
And do you think that the fact that being a type A actually played against you at some point?
No. I think that our pain is an opportunity for our integration as a human, and whether you're type A, B, Q, or LFNOP, I don't know. That's just your orientation and what you get to work with. It comes with pros and cons.
Right. Yeah, I was asking this because I feel that type A people like me and you, we tend to have a higher chance of getting specific problems like digestive problems, which stem from, sympathetic drive all the time. And I feel that there's a connection there. So there's a question. Okay, we're going to talk about gut, or GIT, as I like to call it, infections in a minute. But before that, I would like to address the detox pathways and even immunity. Because the way that I would like to conduct this podcast is
let's assume that somebody's going to go through a killing phase. Like he has infections, this person has infections, he wants to take care of the infections with a so-called killing phase, and then probably a healing phase afterwards. But I feel that the detox pathways and immunity is really, really important. If you agree with me, what would be in practice, like practical tools that you would use to address, enhancing the detox pathways and immunity, and having this process in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that detoxification at a very meta level or basic level is of the utmost importance. In fact, without it, I don't know that your killing program will work or stick. And so I am by no means a detox specialist that can go into the P450 system or for all those things, or what specific binders work for specific toxins. But what I can say is that in general, if you're not pooping, peeing, and sweating every day, your main detoxification functions aren't working. And so I don't care if you have mold illness or not mold illness, or something else that you don't identify with sort of being toxic. It doesn't matter if you're not pooping, peeing, and sweating every day, but you're about to go through a killing phase or a big sort of lifestyle reorientation. And so when I trained with Kalish, when I've worked with people, and when I work with, my friends and family, when they want advice, the first question I'm asking is those three things. Now, most everybody pees every day, but that's just another reminder to drink water and have fluids. It's the sweating and the pooping that some people are really not doing. And it doesn't matter if you want to exercise to sweat, or you want a sauna, whether you do a Finnish like hot sauna, or you do a red infrared sauna. Sorry, couldn't think of it for a second there. You're sweating. So the goal is just to sweat. And then the same thing is with the poop. You cannot be constipated and like really have a great outcome from a detoxification or a killing phase. And of course, if you're having diarrhea or loose stools, that's less of a problem for detoxification, but your programs are going to be much harder to actually stick because of malabsorption. So we can probably cover those things in a bit. But yeah, that's at a very, very basic level. I think you have to start there.
Right. So in terms of solutions, you would say drink more water, have like something that makes the bowel move, and sauna, right? On a daily basis, perhaps.
Or exercise. I mean, you can do
exercise,
cardio if you want, or lift some weights, but you got to get some sweat happening.
Right. Got it. Yeah, it's pretty much also what I typically recommend. And what about immunity? What would be the practical tools that you would recommend for immunity in particular?
Well, I think immunity is sort of an emergent property of a really healthy body. And by emergent, I mean, it's like literally the outcome of many systems working together in concert. And so, immunity is sort of puppeted by the hormone system in a way. Like you can do all the things you want, take all the cool tricks for immunity you want, but if your hormones are just totally just whacked out, you're always going to be fighting either an overactive or an underactive immune system. And so if you then scale that back, what do you need for good hormones? Well, a few of the things that we've already talked about. You need to poop, pee, and sweat every day. Otherwise, you could be recirculating and sort of downregulating your hormones, whether it's thyroid or estrogen or testosterone. But you also, want to get some sunlight in the morning. You want to get some good sleep at night. Try to do some of those basic sort of sleep hygiene issues if you can. And I would say that if you're focusing on the gut and you're focusing on good hormones, then immunity will be an emergent property from that. Now we can definitely go into like sort of tweaking immunity or supporting immunity, whether through vitamins, minerals, herbs, or probiotics or whatever after that. But my general belief around immunity is that the supportive systems will make a bigger difference than a lot of the sort of like hyper tweaking that we can do to it.
Got it. It's a very holistic answer, actually. Talking about sleep and sunlight exposure, I like that. But as far as hormones, would you say that perhaps doing a thyroid hormone trial and even using things like DIM to clear out some testosterone makes sense? having in mind that we're going to go through this healing phase?
I mean, it definitely could by the person. I mean, I think there's a myth out there that everyone's has high estrogen right now, and I don't think that's true. If you look at 100 people's blood panels and their urine panels, you won't see that. That's not the case. Humans are much more diverse than that. But if you have a male who's got signs of too much estrogens and they're growing, what look like boobs, and they're carrying a lot of extra weight and things like that, then for sure. With a woman, the symphony of hormones is much more like an orchestra rather than like a train tracks. And so with women, it's a little bit more convoluted. And I'm not a proponent of just taking DIM. I'd rather people focus on the glutathione pathway if they're going to try to detoxification. So if you're pooping every day, if you have enough amino acids, so I'd rather people take like a broad spectrum amino, not just branched chain amino acids, but take like there's some products out there that have like close to like 15 to 20 of the amino acids out there. And then you have some sort of glutathione support, whether you want to do NAC and vitamin C, or you want to actually do a glutathione product. That's typically how I go about it. And then of course, if we have blood work or we have family history data or something else that would indicate the use of DIM, then I'm all for it. But I actually think there's a huge number of women out there that actually have low progesterone, and they're out there beating the heck out of their estrogen, thinking that that's going to fix it, and it just doesn't.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We're also going to talk about glutamine in a second, so perhaps you would use glutamine and glycine to support the endogenous production of glutathione, right?
Yeah.
One particular thing that came to my mind, and I just forgot about it, so I'll just skip this question and go to the next board, and perhaps I'll remember it later on, because I'm really interested in absorption and elimination throughout this killing phase. So these are also crucial in my opinion, especially when addressing gut infections and going through that. I mean, there's more. There's adrenal support. There's like you said, supporting the hormones. But would you say that the absorption and elimination, parts of this would be, you would work primarily on those before addressing gut infections, during, after, or in all of those phases?
To me, it's if we're looking at it from like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like how do we build a complex system? They're the base of it. So they have to be supported through all the phases. There's no phase where constipation is allowed.
Right.
There's no phase
absolutely.
where ongoing loose stools is allowed.
But you would say still that too much constipation, if we're going through a phase of killing infections, it's even more important, right, to address.
Yeah, because we have to get whatever's getting killed off out of the body. We don't want to recirculate that stuff or accidentally absorb it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say that are the main signs of bad absorption? Would, for instance, indigestible food particles in the stool be a strong sign of that? And what to do about it?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're seeing signs of what you ate in your stool, that's showing you that you're not absorbing it, you're not breaking it down, your transit time is probably too quick, and we need to slow that down for whatever the root cause is, trying to figure that out. But there's other signs of long-term malabsorption that I think people underestimate, and for some people can be overwhelming. So if this is overwhelming, just tune this part out. But if you're somebody who's trying to really unravel this whole thing and you want to go deeper, if you start to look at the end products of what you eat, so let's say you really crave meat or steak or something, red meat, but when you eat it, you don't feel good. But then you also notice that your hair is thin or falling out, or your eyebrows are going away, your nails are brittle, you cannot gain muscle, you're like, I can't like do a push-up, I've always wanted to do a push-up. All of these things are signs of poor protein synthesis and poor protein absorption. So, and then we come back to amino acids, which are needed for all these building blocks. Like your body's going to preferentially rebuild your gut cell or your liver cell or your brain cell before it's going to give you more hair or better skin or better nails. And so if you start to look at like okay, I kind of crave red meat, but when I eat red meat, I don't feel good. So therefore I don't do it. But then I also have all the signs and symptoms of low amino acid absorption. You can begin to make, you can begin to go through the malabsorption of what's happening if you go out like 3, 5, 10 years of this behavior where it's like in the moment, I don't feel good, but I also don't want to take the time to figure out why is it that I can't eat red meat. Meanwhile, I have all these annoying things. And so you can keep doing this over and over again. If you have low energy, you're like, oh, B12, you get your B12 measured, it's low. And then the question is, okay, were you eating anything with B12 in it? And then if your diet just happens to be low B12, when you try to increase a diet with more B12, do you actually raise the numbers? If not, you might have a stomach acid issue, or you might have an enzyme issue. And so I do think these things matter over time. And the first step is watching what goes in the toilet every day.
Absolutely cool. Very insightful. So what are the practical things that we can do to increase absorption and elimination? So actually, I want to take a step back, because he said, if we see indigestive food particles in the stool, it may mean that the transit time is too fast and we may have to bring it down. When I see that, when I have a client who has undigested food particles in the stool, I think about enzymes in the first place. There's lacking enzymes. I mean, this is debatable, right? I don't think that we know yet whether we have this reservoir of enzymes in our body and we burn through them and we can just not utilize them, or if we cannot produce them. I honestly don't know. I expect you to elaborate a little bit on that and more, but I think about enzymes in the first place. Does this make sense? Is enzymes the first thing to look at when we see? Because I myself had this, and I had an acceptable transit time. The problem was, if I wanted to, slow it down, I would have constipation. It seemed that I couldn't find a sweet spot. So either I have too much, too low of a transit time, or I would end up with constipation. So when I see this case, I think about enzymes in the first place. Would you, say that this is reasonable, or would you look at other things other than enzymes first?
I would say there's like a 1A, 1B for me for that type of situation. 1A would be enzymes. Do you, maybe, because we can't necessarily infer transit time just from what we see in the toilet, but we can infer capacity to break down whatever was eaten. And so one of the major issues with what was eaten, like you said, is, do you have the enzyme function to actually do it? And so some people, like you said, due to maybe they don't have the building blocks to build enzymes, maybe there's some sort of activation issue with the pH in their small intestine. Maybe they just lost certain enzyme capacity at the brush border or the microbiome level. So there's a number of things that could go wrong with enzyme production and breakdown. So and the risk to reward ratio of an enzyme supplement is like extremely high. Like basically you either get benefit, or you increase the dose and get benefit, or it just doesn't work for you. There's not really usually a downside to an enzyme product, whether it's ours or other companies, versus the 1B recommendation that I would next go into is checking for your stomach acid if you have low stomach acid, because transit time is a complex variable with a lot of inputs, but one of the major influencing factors is the pH coming out of your stomach. And so if the pH coming out of your stomach is being set incorrectly, you're basically behind the 8 ball the rest of your digestive tract. Like you're just trying to, you're just trying to climb a hill that's full of mud, and you're sort of slipping the whole time, never really making it to the destination if you have the wrong conditions from the beginning. And so I always sort of tell people to check for low stomach acid, because if the signs and symptoms of low stomach acid could equal more constipated in somebody, but also more loose stools in another body. It's not always one or the other. And so doing the enzyme thing, checking that first, high risk reward, easy to use product. And then next thing would be to check for low stomach acid. It's a little bit people consider it a riskier product because you might have a day of pain or a few hours of pain. It's a little scarier to people, even though it's mostly safe and it's been used for, like 40 or 50 years in naturopathic and chiropractic communities, as well as integrative functional medicine communities, raising stomach acid. But for the general person who's just new to sort of biohacking and sort of like taking charge and responsibility for their health, they can be a little concerned about it. So, I don't blame them. But I would say those two are like precursors to your capacity to take, say, kale and turn it into, what's supposed to be in the toilet versus pieces of kale, or take some whatever else you're finding there, nuts or whatever else.
Right. If you do believe that there's an enzyme problem, whatever the problem is, because you give enzymes to this person and there's no more pieces of kale in the toilet, would you actually go and try to find the exact problem of not having the enzymes working? Like you mentioned, some lost capacity because of the microbiome disruption or the pH. I think that, by the way, the pH is really, really important for digestion, and it's very often overlooked. But would you go, and try to pinpoint the problem, as far as lost enzymatic activity? Or would you just, because the alternative would be you just give the enzymes to this person and everything is normal. So why bothering going into the and finding the actual problem underneath this question?
I think in general with enzymes, I would just have them take it and then get them back on track working on whatever their other big root causes are. Because number one, we can't currently test you to find out if you're missing microbiome enzymes or brush border enzymes. The only thing to do there would be to do like a full-on knockout endoscopy, pull the intestinal fluid out, inspect the intestinal fluid. Nobody's doing that.
Right.
And I wouldn't advise the risk reward. Yeah. Very, very invasive. Risk reward is not there. There are some fecal markers, elastase, things like that you can look at on a stool, but that's not going to tell you where the problem's originating from. So for an enzyme issue, also their safety profile in humans is such that it's like really high, and it seems pretty okay for long-term usage. So again, I'm not super worried if someone takes enzymes the rest of their life. I would hope that if they're listening to this show, they're going to realize that was just step one, and because their enzymes are not working correctly, they got a lot more things to figure out. And so I would apply that money and that time to the next phase, whether that's, finding the GI infection or finding the, whatever it might be, the detoxification issue, the hormone issue, et cetera.
Yeah. That's a very sober approach. By the way, do you believe that we have this reservoir of enzymes that we burn through, and some people burn through the that faster because of illness or because of other factors? Or do you believe that our body has the capacity to actually produce the enzymes?
I don't think they're mutually separate. I think it's both and. The literature, like you said, it's debatable. We still don't know that much about digestive enzymes, and like we said, we just don't really have a lot of measurement tools. They're right in the middle of our cavity, so it's not a very easy place to gather data from a human, and it's a complex environment, so research is just sorely lacking. But the most commonly accepted theory at the moment of this recording is that you have a sort of a enzyme reserve, just like you have a number of stem cells. They believe you have a number of stem cells you get throughout your lifetime. Some people burn through those stem cells faster than others. And those stem cells do different things where they go. Same thing with enzymes. Like we may have a preset countdown timer on, you get, for illustration purposes, 10,000 or whatever. And if you lead a really stressed life or a life that just needs a lot more of them, or you have a genetic predisposition, you might run through those a little faster. That being said, there's things we can do to help replenish our stem cells or slow them down, or we could look at it from an ovary perspective, like how we lose our sort of sex hormone production, whether a man or a woman, over as we age. There's things we can do to support those organs. And so I do think it's sort of similar. There's, I think, ways in which we can support and potentially take care of our pancreas and or our brush border or our microbiome, such that maybe we get a longer, lifetime. But I mean, after 50, it's I mean, it's a fact that all of Western culture for sure is trying to avoid, but there is like an actual shutting down of processes that is programmed somehow. And so to assume that the gut is different, I think is kind of ignorant, quite frankly.
I actually asked you this question because the, in the communities that I hang out regarding enzymes, they think that there's the danger that your body cannot either produce them or utilize them well enough if you take them long term. Do you think that this is a risk?
I do not. No, I have searched. I've been on and off enzymes for over 12 years. I had a phase where I was really working I wanted to rebuild my body such that I took no pills. I had no ailments. I had no pains. And I was hyper fixated on that for like 8 years. And as I aged and got a little older and got into my mid 30s and now into my late 30s, I realized that it's a dream that maybe a 20-year-old and an early 30-year-old has. But as you age and you start to realize that time and life, unless you're a monk, or unless you are you're really protected, in general, life is going to take its toll. And so that's what I found. And so I've shifted away from that thinking. I've also watched grandparents age and die and my parents aging now, and just realizing that there's a lot of other forces here that we are unable to escape: taxes and death. And if we look at the risk profiles on these products, there are certain things that could cause toxicity. Like technically for some individuals, if you took vitamin D3 for every day for 3 to 5 years or something, certain demographics of people, if they're not testing, could end up with too toxic of a level of vitamin D3. We know that. We don't have examples of this with enzymes, and we don't know of a way in which we might store them, or we don't know of a feedback mechanism that shuts off our own internal production. I've searched long and hard for these things because for a long time I didn't want to have to rely on them. And then now as a person who's building products for the world, I do not want to inadvertently cause something like this for somebody. That would feel so tragic. I would have a hard time probably running the company after that. So I'm very much, if someone has a theory that's a credible theory, hypothesis, even, send it my way. I'm happy to entertain it because I want to be at the forefront of this, not getting caught off guard just because we have some product out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Love your mindset. But yeah, I don't know. And you're the specialist here, but I love enzymes and I would like to take them forever. And I kind of wanted to hear that answer, which is they don't cause damage long term, or at least I don't believe that they cause damage long term. And so that's awesome. But your mindset is really spectacular, really. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I plan to take them as an anti-aging tool for the rest of my life. And the research on systemic use of enzymes is amazing. And then if we look at the diseases of aging and the hallmarks of aging, one of them is malabsorption and loss of protein, then loss of muscle mass. So what do we need for muscle mass? We got to break those proteins down to amino acids and get them into the gut. So focusing on that after 45, I think should be a hyper focus for people.
Yeah, sure. So coming back to increasing absorption and elimination, what would be your main tool? If you had low hanging fruit tool that you oh gosh. I'm so happy that I have this video guy making the cuts at the end. If you had one tool that you could use, low hanging fruit to increase absorption and elimination, would it be Butyrate? Could Butyrate help in increasing absorption and elimination at the same time, and probably the most low hanging fruit tool that you could use?
I think enzymes would be the lowest hanging fruit. I think butyric acid would be number 2 probably, just because you're saying absorption. And so, in general, I guess it just depends on which lens you're looking at the problem through. I mean, yes, with butyric acid, we are trying to lower systemic inflammation inside the gut, which if you lower that, you're going to get better enzyme production, hopefully, and better absorption. We are trying to help the mucous membranes thicken and heal. We're trying to improve tight junction expression and strength. And so those things are key to not having a chronic leaky gut. And if you don't have a chronic leaky gut, you're going to have a lot better immunity. You're going to have a lot better, frankly, absorption and just life in general. And then microbiome
and
diversity.
fewer food sensitivities as well, right? Even histamine
Correct.
problems, all of that. So in a sense, Butyrate is a very low hang. I mean, it's a very good approach because it seems to tackle a lot of problems at once, right?
It does. It does. It would be the one, like if you wanted a combo tool or sort of like a multi-purpose, the most multi-purpose option for gut healing, I would say is butyric acid for sure. Butyrate.
Got it. So if people react to Butyrate, like I did, I actually reacted to it quite a, I mean, if I were to take it with food, it would be totally fine. But if I took it on an empty stomach, and I actually learned that it's better to take it on an empty stomach so it's not digested, but that's a follow-up question. What is the likely cause? Is it too high of a dose, peptic ulcers, perhaps?
Well, it's going to be product dependent. So okay. I would ask, like, did this product have, was it sodium butyrate or was it tributyrin? Was it liquid?
No, it was definitely first generation Butyrate, and I think it was potassium Butyrate. But I tried different ones. I've tried sodium, potassium, and magnesium actually, and I always had. Well, the problem is I go extreme. That's the main problem of this question. I knew that I needed Butyrate, and so I just grabbed like 3 or 4 capsules, like 1.2, 1.6 grams. Oh, wow. and got it down. And then I ended up with, several times. But if I were to take it with food, it would be fine. So, and now I want to know what's the cause of this, because some of my clients had this even when taking it with food. I think that this is a problem of, we're going to talk about it later on, first generation, second generation, enteric coating and whatnot. But I believe that this was peptic ulcers at the end of it. And this connects to H. pylori infections. We're going to talk about it. Do you have any sober explanation for this other than ulcers?
I mean, unless it was a vegetarian capsule or a gelatin capsule that would have opened in the stomach, I don't know that we could consider that. I think that's a possibility, but also there's just a lot of things that can cause a reaction, and a human brain wants to be a reductionist and reduce it down to 1 or 2 things. But the first generation salts, magnesium, sodium, potassium, all those things, they're immediately absorbed across the membranes. And so if you took too much that your body's not used to, like for instance, if you take out broccoli and you're like, broccoli makes me gassy, I don't want to eat broccoli. You don't eat broccoli for 60 days, and then you eat 1 pound of broccoli, you're going to have the worst next 5 hours of your life. And it's because your body was not ready for a pound. But if you worked up from 3 pieces of broccoli to 1 pound of broccoli by the end of a month, you could eat a whole pound of broccoli and be just fine. So assigning it to peptic ulcers, I don't know, maybe assigning it to just too much too fast. Maybe you spiked your butyrate levels inside your blood, and that did something. Your body didn't like it because it wasn't used to it. Maybe you spiked it locally wherever that product opened up and was delivered, and those cells around that area didn't like it. There's too complex of a system to assign one variable as to that unspecific of a pain point, in my opinion.
Well, the problem is, like I said, I went too high. I'm extreme. I like to test things, and I like to test them for real. That is the actual problem. But I just want to, my brain is always trying to infer logic of what happens. And I was like, let's get to the bottom of this, and perhaps there's a reason. But like you said, like the broccoli, you don't eat broccoli and then you eat a lot of it. And even though it's supposed to be good, I mean, everything is debatable right now, but it's supposed to be good for you. And if you eat a ton of it, like I was actually talking to someone who's on an elimination diet. And he said, you know, I took this food for 6 weeks and I was pretty sure that I was not reacting to it. But today I ate, not 6 weeks, actually 6 months. And today I ate it and he gave me a reaction. It was banana, by the way. And I said, how much of it did you eat? Like, what was the portion of the banana? And he said, 3 bananas. Yeah, like our body likes, you know, baby steps if we go crazy on it. But, you know, I was trying, I guess that the question here would be whether there is anything that would make sense for us to react to Butyrate. But I guess the answer is no, right? As long as we take...
No, there's for sure certain reasons why people would react to butyrate. Like I said, it's just understanding at this moment in time what those reasons would be, I think is just not reliable inquiry, if you will.
Okay. Yeah.
My experience has been that every single reaction when it comes to products can be due to a number of variables. Like there are some people who actually react to magnesium with anxiety and tachycardia and all the symptoms of like the opposite, basically, of magnesium. Like if you think of magnesium, you think sleep, you think slow down, you think relaxing, easefulness, not anxiety, tachycardia, heart racing thoughts, things like that. And so if you have a counterintuitive reaction, which I would say if you take butyrate and you experience like diarrhea, if you experience a bunch of pain and a bunch of just all kinds of crazy symptoms, that would be the opposite of what we would anticipate based on biology, based on anatomy, based on clinical research. And so when that happens, to me, that's like a major red flag. Like, hey, something is going on here. We're missing something very important for this individual, whether it's a cofactor or, like you said, maybe, you know, people used to do this to me all the time. I'd say take dairy out for 60 days. And then they would tell me that they ate dairy and it was terrible. And I don't know my stuff. And they're so mad they wasted 60 days.
They drank a liter of milk. That was a problem.
Yeah. I'm like, well, what did you do? And they're like, well, I ate a whole cheese pizza. And I'm like, what? No, you can't. It's not how things work. Right. So I would just say, though, when you do have a counter reaction, whether it's to magnesium or some people have it to glutamine, we talked about that just a minute earlier. Some people have a counter reaction to glutamine or butyric acid. That is something to get really, really curious about and start digging into the bowels of the internet, trying to figure out what is the missing cofactor for you or what might this indicate. Because in general, butyric acid and butyrate, no matter first gen or second gen, is a pretty inert and very positive product.
Right. So this, you know, I haven't taken it since that reaction. I will resume it, you know, very soon, and I will resume it with second gen products, of course. But I will just observe, you know, what kind of reaction I have and then investigate a little bit more. But I was expecting that there's something that we were supposed to react to, but I guess that's not the answer. Okay, so leaky gut, we didn't talk about leaky gut yet, connected to malabsorption, bad absorption. If we know we have a leaky gut, I would say go very high dose on enzymes, especially before, during, and right after this infection or this killing phase that I was talking to. Do you agree? Can you elaborate a little bit on that? So my idea is like leaky gut, high dose enzyme. There's not a reason not to go high dose enzyme.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's only supportive. You know, if you look at the etiology of how a leaky gut can get formed and what are the contributing factors to a leaky gut, one of them is basically the food is just not being broken down to the proper size to be absorbed quick enough, and you're sort of creating the conditions for an overgrowth, whether it's SIBO or candida or some other yeast or some other bacterial or viral load in there. But in general, you're trying to get rid of also any sort of common protein structure or carbohydrate structure that the gut is currently hyperreactive to. And so by hyperreactive, I mean that our gut can get sensitized, just like our immune system can get overly sensitized to common things it encounters. So people with hay fever have a pollen oversensitization. And so those of us who don't have it, we walk around through the springtime and we don't have an issue. Other people have a severe reaction to this grass or this pollen. The same thing is true for your gut. If the way in which you break down your beef or your broccoli or your kale is always the same, and you're having this leaky gut, you're having this immune oversensitization, even though the foods themselves are not necessarily inflammatory or reactive, it's getting presented the same protein structure over and over and over again. And it doesn't know what to do other than to think that that's a bad thing. And so enzymes will help change that structure and break down those proteins and carbohydrates such that at least it'll be confused and hopefully it'll be absorbed quicker. So your immune system won't be so reactive. That will downregulate the inflammation and cytokine storms that are happening around the gut. If you introduce something like a butyric acid or glutamine, something like that, you can give it more nutrients to actually heal up either the mucous membranes or the cells, those types of things. But yes, changing the input strongly will at least hopefully increase the capacity to heal, if not at least decrease the oversensitization that's probably already happening.
Yeah, I have the very same opinion. So for me, if there's a leaky gut, and especially if people, present with symptoms of malabsorption, for me, enzymes, high dose enzymes are not negotiable, because there's just going to be a lot of reactions to food, to the same, molecules that come into food. And it's like an ongoing reaction. So the gut will not heal unless we remove these blockages, right? And enzymes are really, again, low-hanging fruit tool to counteract that. But what about HCl? So I actually heard you saying that you took HCl after the meal. And to me, the best way to do it is in the middle of the meal. Do you still, like, this was actually a very old podcast, I think. Do you still take it after the meals?
Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an engineer, and if anybody knows the jokes about engineers, is that we try to overcomplicate everything and we try
Absolutely.
to over optimize to the detriment of a lot of things. And I had a phase.
Hey, trust me, I'm an engineer, right?
Okay. Yeah. So I have done phases of healing and phases of health where I tried to get every knob and every dial correct and the timing perfectly on HCl or enzymes or probiotics or whatever it might be. And then I just tested it. I tested the theory. Like, okay, so It's just a theory. There's no actual scientific literature that suggests you have to take your HCl before, during, or after a meal. What do I notice if I do it for 1 month this way, another month this way, another month this way? And what I notice for my body is I find no difference. And so then it goes down to what is the easiest way to sustain this healthy habit. And for me, the easiest way to sustain this healthy habit is to take my pills after my meal, because if I take a big dump of pills before my meal, sometimes that upsets my stomach a little bit. Or I've had instances where I thought we were going to start eating, and so I took a bunch of HCl, and then you didn't eat. And then I didn't eat because maybe a conversation happened or the food got burnt,
exactly. Or things get in the way.
I forget, and then like 30 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I'm hurting. What's happening? And I was like, oh my gosh, I took my pills and I didn't eat. So
awesome.
Yeah. So now I do take it. I do take it after my meal, directly after. I do know that for some people, it is really, really beneficial for them to take it right before they start eating or right in the middle. So
it's a one-to-one basis, and we have to test it out, because there's no scientific answer to this question, right? That's the bottom line.
Correct.
Proteolytic enzymes. What is the best timing? I take it 5 minutes before the meal. Again, if I end up not eating, then I mean, in the case of enzymes, they will still have an effect, right? It's actually going to be a systemic one. But what is assuming that we're actually going to have some food, what would be the best timing in your opinion?
Yeah, probably. Again, enzymes taken on an empty stomach are very beneficial for the system. They become systemic enzymes. Enzymes taken with food within like 30 minutes or so of a bite are going to have the majority of their effect on your food. So, again, science does not have the answer for this. This is art, and the art will come down to your body
Testing,
and your lifestyle.
right? Yeah, and then test like. But do you actually take it like in the middle of the meal? When do you take them? I'm curious.
I don't. I take mine at the end of the meal as well. I take them all together. That way I don't forget what I'm taking. And I'm that guy that either pulls a giant baggie out of my pocket and, downs a bunch of pills at the end of the meal, or I have to get up and go to the cupboard and get my pills. But for me, on how my brain works, that's the best cadence. But like I said, some people do report that it is the difference between having a big histamine reaction or not having a histamine reaction if they take their enzymes right before they start eating.
Right. Yeah, I think that for me makes sense because we actually start releasing enzymes even when we're preparing our food, right? So to me, it's more natural, but I didn't test it. I mean, I tested it in the middle of the food. I never tested after because to me, it doesn't make as much sense as taking them before or during the meal. But yeah, I guess that, there's no scientific answer. So let's test it out as good engineers. Yeah. So I also theorize that taking proteolytic enzymes between meals is beneficial. I mean, we were talking about this, is beneficial when having leaky gut, as a way to break down proteins that may have escaped from the gut into the bloodstream and decrease inflammation from that process. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I would. I would say that that's a really sound strategy to try and test out. Even if it's not leaky gut, you're going to get systemic enzyme benefits. And there's a really solid amount of research on proteolytic, and proteolytic just means protease or protein degrading enzymes. Taking those on an empty stomach, whether in between meals, in the morning, or before bed, there's a lot of studies, whether it's on lowered inflammation, better blood flow. It makes your blood less sticky. That it sort of helps fibrin deposits. There is some data suggesting it does help clean up those undigested proteins or weird protein structures, and
even busting biofilms, right?
Potentially biofilm disruption, as well as these things called circulating immune complexes, which can be found in not all, but some autoimmune conditions.
Right. Yeah. Is there any other thing that you think that could help with the same purpose other than taking enzymes between meals? Of course, for the biofilms, we have, biofilm busters or disruptors. But for other things like breaking down the proteins that leak into the bloodstream and shouldn't really be there.
Yeah, that's, I don't know of any. I mean, there might be, but I'm not aware of any. I mean, right. I think if that's a specific use case, then it's a great tool for that, or it should be at least tested for that. I'm not aware of another option.
Right. What about taking enzymes when dealing with chronic illness anyways? Because I feel that everyone should be, like, every sick person should be on enzymes. That's my theory. And they should be taking them with meals, like 5 minutes before, with the meal, after the fact, whatever. But they should also take them between the meals for the inflammation purposes. So counteracting the cytokine storm that they are always under. I guess the question that I'm trying to ask is there any reason not to taking enzymes when you're sick and chronically sick?
I mean, my belief is, and what I've seen is that it's going to be beneficial taking them on an empty stomach and then taking them with food if you're chronically unwell. You're covering a lot of pathways that you can't cover in a lot of different ways. So it's a bit like a multivitamin in a way, a little bit more targeted and a little bit more powerful. But it's a big sort of it's a great ROI, again, low risk, high reward type option. Right. So yeah, I'm a big benefit as well, or a big fan of it, and I think there could be big benefit there as well.
Yeah, and you don't think of any you're not aware of any contraindication taking enzymes. So
Oh,
I actually learned
um,
that peptic ulcers may be a problem here. Is that true?
yeah, yeah. Number one, if you take them and you have a reaction, then don't take them.
Stop. Right.
Stop. If anything hurts, don't do it. Don't be a dummy when it comes to that stuff. Don't just listen to a show like this and say, well, I'll just push through the pain. The pain is there for something. Another thing would be if you're on blood thinners, you may run into some issues with blood thinners. Especially some of the specialty high-powered proteolytic enzymes that are systemic only. They're not digestive and systemic. And then, yeah,
like natto, right? Nattokinase would be a very good example of that, right?
Yes, exactly. And then, yeah, there's a number of conditions that there's no way we would ever be able to list them or even know them, but you might have a gastric peptic ulcer and you could have destroyed your mucous membranes due to high cortisol, low cortisol, high estrogen, low estrogen, and just destroyed your mucous membranes, and then exposing those cells to proteolytic enzymes may aggravate something. So again, that's where if you experience pain, stop, get support from your health provider, your doctor, whoever you're working with who knows about this. And if it persists, get your money back and try something else in the short term. Again, that is a counter reaction to what we would expect. We'd expect you notice nothing or you notice benefit. If you notice pain to an enzyme, that is like a red flag that, hey, you got something serious going on here and you should dig deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. But considering that there's no reaction to them, then in principle, there's no contraindication really of taking them, right?
Yeah, again, as long as you don't have, blood thinner usage, and there may be other conditions out there that I'm not aware of, but that's the one that I'm most aware of right now.
Okay. So closing this leaky gut section, we all know that, to heal a leaky gut, we have to increase our parasympathetic tone, avoid stress and all of that. But I'm really trying to focus this podcast on practical tools. What would be your favorite tools to target a leaky gut? I've actually heard you talking about glutamine at 80 grams a day, which was very surprising. And then I actually went deeper and it makes all the sense. Other than glutamine, what would you use?
My number one tool that I think is like the most advanced generation and the easiest tool at this point is Tributyrin. I think Tributyrin, the next generation butyrate supplements, liquid Tributyrin, not powdered Tributyrin, is the number one tool for supporting a leaky gut, especially when combined with an enzyme product. That's like the 1-2 punch, I think, at this moment in time. If you're still struggling, if you still need support beyond that, the question becomes why. You can test other things like high dose glutamine, L-glutamine protocols, but that was kind of like, version 1 of these things. And I tried it. I've used it with other people. It seems to be helpful, but it really is only targeting the small intestine cell regrowth. And there's a lot of things that we've talked about here that we now know about leaky gut that are very important, which is mucous membrane health, microbiome diversity, the sort of the gut defensins, the health of those mast cells. A lot of these things could cause a ongoing leaky gut scenario if not addressed. And you just can't get that with like mucinogens or L-glutamines or glycine. Again, not bad and can be helpful from a kitchen sink approach, but if we're going to be picky and choosy and we want the most efficient path forward, and we want to save those extra products in case this path doesn't work, I would save those for the next round. Right.
So
and
enzymes
then
and
hormones.
Butyrate.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then hormones. Like if you're doing like Holozymes and Tributyrin X and these types of things, or Sunbutyrate and some like really high dose, Thorn or Digest Cold or something like that, and you're not seeing results, then the question is like, okay, that's pretty rare. What else could be going on? You should probably dig into your hormones and, see if there's something causing immune dysregulation or a mucous membrane problem, something like that.
Right. So to sum it up, the two most effective tools would be Butyrate and enzymes for a leaky gut, right? So you're mentioning many of the healthy gut products. I just want to tell the audience that there's a coupon code, or at least an affiliate link down below to get this products. I'm going to bring Steve once again to talk more about the products specifically and their usages in all of this. But this first podcast is really revolving around, a much more holistic approach to gut health and the problems that are going on. And then in the second round, I'm going to bring Steve to talk about the actual functions of this product in this process. Okay, great. So let's now talk about infections. So we've talked about leaky gut, tools to address that. I would like to talk about infections now. And I actually want to take advantage of your one-to-one complicated cases that you've worked with. So I'm sure that you worked with people in the past that had multiple infections, SIBO, H. pylori, general dysbiosis, and whatnot, many undesirable overgrowths. And in this setup, when someone comes to me with all these infections, the first thing that I think about targeting is H. pylori, actually. I mean, we've talked about the importance of the enzymes, HCl, better bioflow, which is insurance against SIBO, in my opinion, and actually overgrowth in general. But if there's one infection that I would go after, immediately, it would be H. pylori, because if we have that, and if that is bad, it's just compromising the whole process of digestion. It's just, creating low HCl, possibly peptic ulcers. Do you agree with this, or would you have a preferred infection to go after, if you will?
I think it's a very important one, and depending on what the presentation was, I think it should be the number one. If someone did a bunch of stool tests and their stool test showed they had Giardia and H. pylori and Candida, then I would say you got to kill the Giardia first. There is, if someone has C. diff or something like that, like true C. diff, like that is a life-threatening problem. So that's why you don't want to always be trying to do this by yourself. Like, work with a responsible healthcare provider or somebody that has solid training on this stuff, because you can get lost in the forest and miss the trees, you get lost in the trees and miss the forest. My brain is not working the way I want. I think I need a little bit more caffeine, but
or Butyrate.
Or Butyrate. Yeah. But let's say that someone has markers of a yeast overgrowth on an organic acids test, or they have markers of SIBO overgrowth, but they also have that H. pylori. Then I try to think of it the same sort of systems theory and holistic way of like, okay, what precedes what, and how do these infections maybe co-create themselves or coexist, because everything in the body is coexisting. And so in this case, I would agree with you that H. pylori is going to literally burrow into the stomach cells and then shut off the production of acid around that area where it's burrowed in there. If you get enough of that, you get low stomach acid. Well, low stomach acid is a massive risk factor for all overgrowths in the small intestine. And it's a massive risk factor for a overgrowth after you've killed it with like a rifaximin or a xifaxmin or something like that. So I would agree from that perspective that you have to get the sort of like the upper biology working, because it has downstream effects that legitimately set up the conditions for the other issues. And so, I would say that's a big deal. And especially if they're presenting with common problems, like maybe, an ulcer or heartburn or things like that, that you would also say like, okay, clearly this H. pylori is causing, is a big enough overgrowth or big enough growth. It's causing everyday symptoms. That's like a huge red flag to definitely go after that.
Yeah. And the reason why I say this, and I'm not, I don't want to sound like H. pylori is the end of the world and should be tackled first because it's the worst infection ever. But I do think that it's commonly, overlooked and not taken appropriately. Like I see people all the time trying to treat SIBO and boosting their HCl. And perhaps the cause of low HCl was the H. pylori, and they are not addressing that. So that was I think that a lot of practitioners just ignore H. pylori, or just, push it down to a corner where it's not really an important infection, let's take care of SIBO. And I because you had an H. pylori yourself, an H. pylori infection yourself, right? Was it causing like massive problems? Did you also feel that it was creating other problems, including fostering other infections?
I mean, I don't know at the time. I mean, I know that I had some amount of acid reflux at the time. I had, bloating. I had low stomach acid, things like that. So from that perspective, it was a problem, and a problem that I wanted to get rid of. H. pylori is a tough one, kind of like SIBO in a weird way. And so I don't want this to like, if you're like just new on this journey, just skip this part of the interview. But if you're a veteran of trying to figure out your health and take responsibility of these programs, like there is a point of potentially diminishing returns if you're trying to always get like a negative result on some of these H. pylori tests. Same with some of the SIBO tests. Like if the test says you have it, but you don't show any signs or symptoms of what would legitimately say that you have that, your time and money might be spent elsewhere, because at some level, the amount of H. pylori that's now circulating through the world, and if you want to like get really nitty gritty on how you get H. pylori, it's like, holy cow, if you kiss someone who has it, which I mean, if you're married or you're partnered up and you're not doing that anymore, great. But if you're out there dating, or if you have children or dogs, like your vectors of risk
extremely
and
contagious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, the chances
and
of
there's
coming
the
in,
fecal oral route as well. So
you could just
live
go into
with
a
someone
public
with
bathroom.
Yeah.
So I would, after you've done a solid H. pylori killing program and you don't exhibit the symptoms, but let's say it comes back positive on a test, I would focus more on like, okay, what does the body need to fight that? It needs a really healthy mucous membrane. It needs really healthy stomach acid. It needs really healthy hormones. It needs lots of vitamins and minerals. And I would focus on the next infection. Because I do think there are people out there that are routinely just running killing program after killing program on their H. pylori, almost like, some people do with SIBO or Lyme or some of these other things. There is a law of diminishing returns that you cannot beat. And at some point you should pivot and spend your money and time elsewhere.
Yeah, I also feel that, on that note, if people are doing this killing programs in a circle, I mean, if they have to do more than one, there's something that they are not addressing, and they should really, because, even one is debatable. Like, I'm going to have a guest that is all pro feeding the good guys and not killing the bad guys. Like the good guys are just going to overcrowd the bad guys naturally. But I just see so many people doing these killing programs over and over and over, and they don't stop and think, what's the root cause of this? Why do I have to go into this SIBO programs like every 6 months? Doesn't make any sense. But once, it makes kind of sense. They didn't take care of their gut health as they were supposed to for a while, and then they have an overgrowth, but now they are aware of it, they treat it, and they go into the maintenance phase and make sure that they don't have it again. So totally agree with
just
that.
to speak on that for a second, this comes directly from my mentor, Dan Kalish, or one of my mentors, Kalish. His teaching, the way he taught me, was to slow down, unless someone has like a life-threatening illness, the advice was to actually slow down and focus on 30 days of detox, make sure they're pooping, peeing, and sweating, and prepping, maybe there's like a glutathione issue or something like that, or amino acid issue. And then prepping their hormones with like adrenal support or some other like sort of adrenal / sex hormone support for another 30 days before you even went into the killing phase. And then during the killing phase, you still ran your detox, like some version of a detox support and some version of a hormone support. Because if you think about it, unfortunately, war is up in the world right now. War happened throughout a lot of our history. It's very sad. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't condone it, but it's a very important metaphor for what we're talking about right now. We have seen with what's happened in the world that if you just bring in soldiers and bomb the heck out of something and then leave, this creates a vacuum, and it creates a lot of rubble and a lot of things that have to be rebuilt for things to operate. That is not that much dissimilar to just going on a high dose H. pylori killing or a high dose SIBO killing program and then wondering why it didn't work. You didn't prepare ahead of time with pre-support for the war, and you didn't spend any time rebuilding after the war. And you want, just like some ill-fated attempts by the US to try to do some things in the world that they probably shouldn't have done, you want the country and the people involved to govern themselves. You want your body to govern itself without the need for killing agents every 60 days or every 6 months. And so you have to think from that perspective ahead of time. What must my body do to be able to step in and keep this up after we take away those killing agents?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm going to ask you a few things also on using probiotics and prebiotics and postbiotics during the killing phase. But in this podcast, because it's so mainstream now, it seems that everyone has to go. I mean, everyone with a gut problem has to go through a killing phase. That I'm really, centering this discussion around this killing phase. So, but again, in this killing phase, we said that enzymes could be used as a biofilm disruptor, right? So that would serve as a biofilm disruptor.
They're not the strongest. I mean, definitely like Interface Plus by Claire Labs is probably one of the best products out there that I'm aware of. There might be other new ones, but I think it's lactoferrin is the product in there. That's like the really bomb biofilm disruptor. That's like, enzymes are sort of like a mild version, but Interface Plus is really like, if you're ready to go after the H. pylori or in the active thing, I would definitely encourage people to seek a product specifically built for that from their provider.
Right. Actually, this very same question popped up in the last episode with Mrs. Story, and we were talking about it. I don't like Interface because it has EDTA in it, and for people with metal toxicity may be a problem. But I like lactoferrin isolated because it's also an immune booster, and it breaks down some biofilms. But I'm all for gentle biofilm disruptors because we have loads of healthy biofilms in the body, right? Or biofilms used by healthy communities of bacteria. And so, totally. Yeah, I like the enzymes and the lactoferrin. Actually, those are my favorite ones for that. So you're sometimes called the specific carbohydrate diet guy. I mean, I heard this a few times. Would the SCD be the best diet while addressing infections? Let me just say something before this, which I think it's very important. I see many people going into the low FODMAP diet, SCD diet, whatever, and 1 year after, 2 years after, they are still in that diet. And I think that this is kind of dangerous, to be honest. So the question is, I'm pre-assuming that you also find some merit to this logic, and these diets are supposed to be used temporarily for a given end. And with that in mind, would you say that the specific carbohydrate diet would be the best while addressing infections? Or is it more sort of a gut problem minimizer that could be used in a more holistic manner and not specifically in a killing phase?
I think that diet is a highly nuanced conversation. If you're eating anything that you cannot break down and properly assimilate, then it's bad for you. And I do think that we are restricting ourselves into dysbiosis in general these days. I see the specific carbohydrate diet in a class of diets that is for very disrupted guts, like very sick guts. You hopefully should be able to do like a paleo autoimmune diet, maybe modified slightly with like some low FODMAP, but not getting rid of all of the FODMAPs. That should probably, most people can adhere to that diet sooner. However, what the specific carbohydrate diet brings to the table that a lot of other diets in this area don't is that some people are very, very deficient in the enzymes needed to break down starches. And starches are very much in every processed food out there. They're very much in some of these like rice and potato and sweet potato style paleo diets and things like that. And it's not that starch is bad. It's not that carbohydrates are bad. It's just that if you don't have the proper enzymes to break down and absorb these things, you're going to have bloating, you're going to have gas, you might have more villi destruction, things like that. And so the specific carbohydrate diet is like, okay, in my world, I'm like, all right, first go like paleo autoimmune. And if you're still having a bunch of digestive issues, probably just skip to SCD, but don't stay on SCD longer than like, or don't stay on like the basic package of SCD for longer than like say 8 to 12 weeks. I want you adding more things in right away. I want you going, I want you adding in starches and trying it at week 8. I want you attempting to figure out what is your expanded food zone. And so I think that's, whether you go low FODMAP or SCD or GAPS or low fermentation, everybody's got a diet these days. So whatever it is, just don't stay on it longer than 12 weeks if possible. And then take products that can support you in trying these new foods. So enzymes, for instance, we've talked a lot about enzymes, but like people again are, and I've written blog posts about this from like, I don't know, 8-10 years ago. So I got to probably rewrite them and put them back out there because people forget. But literally, as you said, your body senses through smell and through other mechanisms what you're about to eat, and then it will react and produce stomach acid or enzymes or whatever to break that down. If you're not sensing or smelling or tasting dairy or starches or something like that for a really, really long time, like 12 weeks, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then you just start eating it, don't be like surprised or upset when you have issues. Go really small. Start with a tablespoon or a quarter cup of something that you're trying to reintroduce.
Because we lack the enzymes, but also the bugs in the microbiome, right?
Exactly, both of those. And
so restricting ourselves in terms of diet will eventually mean a more restricted microbiome, and that's a problem. And that's why that's essentially why you say don't go longer than whatever, like 6-12 weeks on these diets, because we are pretty much restricting the microbiome growth too much, right? That would be the main problem.
Correct.
As well as the enzymes, of course, like the enzyme production, or I mean, this boils down to the fact that the body needs baby steps, right? And if we take everything out of it and then we try to reintroduce it, then it will not be able to handle these things properly because it will just lack the memory. And again, this may be the enzymes and the bugs for this particular case. So it seems that the SCD is more, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more like a gut minimizer problem in the sense that you may lack the enzymes to break down specific carbohydrates and starches. And a low FODMAP, if we're again thinking about this killing phase, would make more sense because that's targeted at not allowing specific bug communities to grow. Does this make sense?
I don't know that I would classify it like that. I mean, I think that many of the low FODMAP foods are the same foods you'd get rid of in a complex carbohydrate diet. So I think the big thing is like avoiding processed food. Low FODMAP still allows you to eat things out of packages and things like that. Whereas SCD, the rules are nothing coming out of a package. Everything's home cooked. And I think that forces people to be stricter and forces them to eliminate other processed sugars and things like that. So I don't know that one's better or worse for a killing phase. I think that, again, if you can do a healthy diet and not have reactions, that's the best thing. And then, like you said, because your gut bugs will grow in response to whatever you feed them, trying to get that diet re-expanded as fast as possible, I think is probably the most important thing.
Yeah. Do you actually aim at eating like 60 plus items a week in your daily life?
Personally, I don't. I can't keep track of that. That's one of those variables that's just an ideal. It's kind of like, I wish I was always a nice person to everybody I always met, and I wasn't in my head or having a bad day. So eating,
but do you make an active effort to increase the number of foods that you eat on a regular basis, or do you found your own like corner of specific foods that are the staples of your diet and you're okay with it in terms of not growing a very diverse microbiome because at the end of the day you feel good with it?
I would say don't emulate what I do. Find out what's right for you. Personally, I don't track that, but I do this because we teach what we need to know and learn the most and integrate the most. So if we talk to me in 5 or 10 years, maybe I will be doing that. At the moment, it's just beyond I feel like it's almost like life is kind of like a game to me, where like you only have so many units of attention, and you only have so many units of money, and only so many units of like improvement that you can make on a daily or a weekly basis. And so for some people, they do need to increase what they're eating. Like I've seen my family members around me, they just be like, well, I like this, and so I just keep eating that. I'm like, well, how about you have like a few spoonfuls of sauerkraut, like real sauerkraut, with at the end of the meal or before the meal every day? Or, you know, why don't we eat a salad? And so it just depends on where you're at. I try to have fermented food every day. I do take a mixture of prebiotics and probiotics every day. I do take my butyric acid every day. So I do a lot of things to supplement and keep my microbiome diverse and healthy. I try to incorporate fermented foods, and I wish that I ate like a pound of veggies a day, and I could tell you that I do that, but I fade in and out. I do. It's just dependent on stress and life and things like that.
Got it. This was just a totally out of curiosity question. So coming back to the actual discussion, if you will, what is the actual practical difference to keto? So between SCD and keto, what is the actual difference? Because I was at some point I thought that I was doing SCD, and I was not, because I was eating a lot of pumpkin, and I found out that's not allowed in the SCD, right? You eat a lot of it, at least.
I thought it was, but I mean, I haven't brushed up on SCD in like a long time, because I don't really teach it as much anymore, because I'm much more like food agnostic. But
yeah. So what would be the practical difference between these two? Actually,
I mean, keto, you're driving your body into a specific metabolic state. And if you eat too much protein, actually protein would be the thing that I would focus on as much or more than the carbohydrates for keto. The majority of people eat too much protein when they're trying to drive themselves into ketosis. I struggle with it because of that, for instance, and keto doesn't really work for me.
At the same time, they don't eat as much fat as they were supposed to, right?
Right.
Okay.
And so on the specific carbohydrate diet, you can eat blueberries and berries and like certain fruits like apples and bananas, and certain vegetables that are higher in carbohydrate that you cannot eat on keto. Like if you're going to be doing keto, you cannot eat like carrot sticks. Like if you want to have like carrot sticks and is something to munch on, like you'll immediately bump yourself out of ketosis after like 3 of those. So, but on SCD, one of the things that I struggled with was, what do you do when you're not eating chips or when you want something crunchy? And so what I defaulted to was baby carrots. And, we could go down a rabbit hole about whether or not I should eat baby carrots because the way they're processed, and that might not be the best, but I can't optimize every variable. And so it was like, do I eat chips or do I eat baby carrots? And I was like, I'll take baby carrots. That's a much better solution.
Every day.
So I would take baby carrots and I would dip them in everything, whether it's almond butter to hummus to, I've tried weird stuff.
I did the same with actual carrots, but I would light fry them in coconut oil. You have that crunchiness. Yeah, it's really, I mean, this took me a while to figure out. So but
I've never tried that.
Yeah, you cut it in sticks and you light fried it in coconut oil, and it's delicious. It's better than French fries, to be honest. You just add a little bit of salt. It's great. And I also miss that texture, and I did it that way. I
like it. That's really cool. That's very creative.
Yeah. So if a starch is a problem, which seems to be that the foundation of this SCD diet, if it is a problem and you don't take enzymes and you eat the starch, it would be noticed right away, right? I mean, for someone to determine whether starches are a problem, if they are not doing any support like HCl and enzymes and whatnot, if they eat it, they would notice it right away, right?
I mean, probably. I mean, if you wanted to cover all your bases, I would say get a blood glucose meter, like a blood glucometer on the back of your arm. Know your data before you start eating starch again. Play with the different starches. Rob Wolf did an entire book about this, about how based on your microbiome and your gut, as well as your hormone status, you might be very good with white rice and very bad at sweet potatoes, or you might be very good at white potatoes, but not sweet potatoes. And so I would say, number one, track your digestive symptoms as you introduce that starch. If you exhibit a bad change, like more towards constipation, more towards loose stools, gas, bloating, and you didn't, again, caveat, don't eat 3 sweet potatoes. Don't go out and get a whole basket of French fries the first time you try this.
Just to see if you react to it.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Absolutely.
You're gonna react. But if you start small and you build up like a little bit of white rice and then a bigger place of white rice, and it's the same white rice every day for like 5 days, you should know, like your digestive system will tell you if you react to it, and your blood sugar will tell you if your hormones are capable of controlling it.
Many interesting things. So this sounds like a very nice biohack. So you just get the glucose meter in the back of your arm, and you track it. I assume that tracks the whole day, right, of glucose levels.
Yeah.
And then you just try different foods. I actually never thought about it. I actually get, one of those one-time glucose meters where you have to, pinch your finger and whatnot, and then measure it. But I never thought about using that device. This is actually very, very insightful. Thanks. The other thing that I would like to say is, if a person is used to have all kinds of starches, does not have a problem with them, there's in principle no reason why they should try the SCD, right? Because it seems to me that,
unless they're having a bunch of diarrhea and bloating,
right,
and they can't figure it out, they try other things, and they go grain free and they go gluten free, they go low FODMAP, and it doesn't resolute, then yeah,
give it a try, right? Because there's this problem of, if you don't take the food for 6 weeks, then the body gets used to it, and you may be masking reactions to that food, right? So again, the elimination diet here. Okay, got it. Fibers and probiotics when killing infections. Again, I'm trying to center the podcast around an infection phase, a killing phase. I'm sorry. And this is perhaps not optimal, but it is what it is. Fibers and probiotics when killing infections. I think that, like myself, you're not a big fan of probiotics in general, because they don't colonize. Like, after decades around this subject, we found out that they don't really stick, they don't colonize. Even fermented foods, you're just getting the metabolites out of the bacteria that were there to ferment, and most of them do not colonize. But I do find SBOs, soil-based organisms, remarkable, at least on paper. Would you use fibers and probiotics when trying to actively kill infections? Or would you use those later on, especially because of the fibers would feed some of the infections?
Probably not fibers, unless someone was like severely constipated, and that's what allowed them to go. Like detoxification and elimination comes before all those things. So, but as part of like a killing protocol, I haven't really heard of that. I don't see that being necessary or extra helpful. And some probiotics, again, if you, as you mentioned, probiotics are probably not for recolonization of the microbiome. I think that's been debunked at this point. They are for other things, like optimizing your skin or your brain or your immune system, or potentially increasing certain other types of healthy probiotic bacterial levels, like Akkermansia or something like that. So and for some people it does regulate motility. So if you have one that works, I don't think you have to stop it. But there are other protocols where you might add in a beneficial yeast like S. boulardii, which I don't know if you classify that as a probiotic. I think a lot of people lump it together. It's same but different. So
I do classify it as a probiotic, but that one is actually out of this question because I use it all the time. Like, a killing infection without S. boulardii does not make sense to me. So yeah, I was not being congruent here. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I think they're helpful for some people. If you don't notice their help, you probably don't need them in the killing phase. After the killing phase, or even before the killing phase, when you're trying to set up, the rebuild of the right environment, they can be supportive, but not the way that most of them have been sold to us, in a roundabout fashion. They are very powerful with the right amount and the right strains. As a generalized, like, oh, I'm taking my probiotic, therefore I'm healthy, or therefore my microbiome's better. That's just not true.
Got it. Got it. How about restricting any kind of foods? I think that we talked about this when we talked about the FODMAP diet and whatnot. So one particular question in that regard, malabsorption or digestion of fats, is this an indication of leaky gut and increased need for enzymes?
Yes. Yep. Loose, malabsorption of fats, oil in the toilet, that's definitely malabsorption of fats, and enzymes are typically the best thing for that.
Got it. Binders in dealing with LPS while in this killing phase, any thoughts?
I mean, if you need them to feel good, like some people have so much mold and so much detoxification issues that they literally react to everything. And the one thing that allows them to sleep at night, or that allows them to, be a normal human, is to use binders. So yeah, go ahead and take them. There are other schools of thought that say that you would like to take a binder, to mop up whatever killing has happened. So I'm not against them. And I've seen plenty of success for some types of people without them. So I don't know that they're necessary, but for certain individuals, certain populations of people with certain problems,
Right.
They might be.
Yeah. Okay, two last questions. The first one, I think that we talked about this, but I would like to have a more elaborate thought from you. Killing infections isn't perhaps a long-term solution, or just one solution at all. What would be, in your opinion, the best way to keep things in check, like gut health in check, so that you actually avoid infections and other problems?
It goes back to that, like, how do you build a community? How do you build a village? You need the resources and the right structure to create a healthy community, in this case, a healthy gut. And so we have to look at what does a healthy gut look like, and what are the principles of that? One of those principles is really healthy stomach acid. If you don't have healthy stomach acid, good luck trying to get the rest of it to work out. It's going to be really frustrating. You're going to be chasing your tail a lot. Same thing with enzymes. If you have subpar enzyme function or release, you're always going to be behind the 8 ball. You're always going to be fighting a harder fight than you need to. And so I think those are some basics. If you haven't eliminated the leaky gut, or supported the mucous membranes, or supported a healthy microbiome, that's where a butyric acid, or a partially hydrolyzed guar gum, or XOS, or there's some really cool resistant starches and other cool prebiotics out there that can really help build up a better microbiome. And so the question is just like, do you have all the right things there to keep the infections away and fight them when they come? Because the idea that you're going to walk through your life for 10 or 20 years and not be exposed to bad things is just, I mean, maybe if you live in a bubble and you live in lockdown the rest of your life, but
Absolutely.
unlikely. So you want your immune system ready to go. You want your gut ready to go when the eventual exposure happens. It responds, and you're okay, and you don't have lasting issues. That's what we want. And system resiliency, I think, is the answer, and that starts with just the mechanics of the gut.
Right. But in terms of products, you would say HCl, if there's a need to it, for it, enzymes and fibers, right?
Yeah, that would be like the ongoing.
Yeah, support. Okay, got it. So last question, what are the things, or the main things and biohacks, if you will, that you do today to keep your own health and well-being in check?
Well, I do those things with the gut. I mean, I rotate through probiotics all the time. I take multiple fibers on and off every day, and I kind of rotate them. I take my enzymes, I take my systemic enzymes. So I'm very diligent about that, and HCl when I have a high protein meal. Beyond like being like very much in the supplement game and having a healthy diet, I do try to ground, like I try to earth as often as possible. And I have recently realized that actually doing like 20 to 30 minutes of cardio is actually very, very beneficial for my sleep. And so as well as I can suffer from anxiety. So I've long been a cardio hater, and there's a lot of data on like marathoners and some bad experiences if you do too much cardio. But as somebody who's done a lot of strength training and not much cardio, recently I've been doing 20 to 30 minutes of cardio in the morning, and not like super high intensity, but decent level 2 heart rate stuff. And I've seen a dramatic improvement in my daily life.
Got it. Awesome. So, Steven, as we talked, I'm going to bring you over again to talk about the healthy gut products, second gen Butyrate, enzymes, HCl, and there's a new product I just found out. And I'm very looking forward to talking to you about that and the roles of I think that we talked about the roles of those products in this entire process, but the next podcast, I would like to go even deeper and talk about each of the products in depth. Okay, thank you so very much for doing this with me and your availability. It was incredible.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. On to the next one.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, I hope that you guys like this. Please subscribe to the channel. I think that this is important, especially if you want to keep up with the the latest things on gut health, mercury poisoning, Lyme, mold illness. I'm bringing all the experts known. There's gonna be, to be honest, this takes me a fairly amount of time because I have to study the podcasts and put them together, and sometimes this is quite a lot of work. I'm fortunate that I have a video guy to edit it out, otherwise it would be an insane amount of work. But I enjoy this very much. And so if you have the impression that I interrupt my guests too much or something, please take this lightly. I'm not doing this to make money. I'm not doing this, I don't see it as a job. So I just try to get a kick out of it and extract the type of information that I'm looking for, and take the whole discussion in a direction that I want to follow, because I'm primarily interested in that subject or in that direction. So with that being said, take all this podcast with a pinch of salt. Also, read the disclaimer. It's really important. I've been approached by many people who ask me questions like as if this podcast were medical advice here, not. So, just have that in mind as well. Also, if you extracted some value out of this, consider to get involved in the project. There's, in the first comment, there's the link called Get Involved, and you may actually be part of this project, especially if you want to suggest further guests, specific questions for guests, like bringing another guest over once again. That is always going to happen, I'm pretty sure, or it's going to happen multiple times. I'm pretty sure, because some of the guests I'm bringing over, they are really, really fun to talk to. And at the end of the day, this is all about fun and getting the right information and move on. As far as coaching, I was also approached by people who wanted to get my coaching on gut health, and I am not currently providing any kind of coaching services. With that being said, I see you in the next episode. In good health, take care. See you there. Bye-bye.